Hey everyone, Nathan Nerdark here from Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. And today we're going to be talking about misdirection and red herrings. And as a Games Master tip, and with me I have
Dave.
Ryan.
So Ryan, you brought this up, but I figure just like to clarify, misdirection, red herrings are all basically when you show your players something or you mention something and your players go, oh, this has got to be dealing with the plot,
right.
Dealing with a...
So the red herring is the thing that that always seems like the obvious solution. The players get gung-ho on chasing after it. And, in your mind as the GM, you've already decided that this thing is not actually the thing in question. So, to bring it into, recent gameplay, in Ted's game, it turned out that the mayor was, in fact, the leader of the blood cultists. Now, had he had, some villainous NPC... NPC that looked villainous on the surface and would have been the obvious choice to be the leader of the blood cultists.
Like maybe a noble who mysteriously hangs out with people at night.
Or had, some weird habits or whatever.
There absolutely was a red herring there because he was the hero of the town. The opposite of being the villain of the town. So that was the misdirection. And then also...
But that's not technically... A red herring is, this guy looks so much like the villain and he's not. That's a red herring.
Yeah, but this was misdirection.
Yeah, it was misdirection.
The hero of the town.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know about it. I mean, Dave did because he was talking with him about it, but I had no clue.
Yeah. Which is a great
Scott's character
surprise.
Just assumed everyone was a blood cultist. So when he said the mayor was, I was like, okay.
But Scott was
you,
looking at party members also.
Yeah, he was getting a little paranoid with blood cultery.
There's little girls in the street. You're a blood cultist.
Early on, there was a leader put out in that campaign as the guy. I forget his name.
It had a Z name.
Yeah, and we were looking for him. So that was the red herring.
Yeah.
In essence, he was the leader of the blood cult in the area, and he was the guy gathering all the things, but it was actually the mayor operating under another guy.
Yeah. He was using a name for his blood cultist activity and supposedly the person we're looking for. So yeah, that was definitely
He's a cover
as you can get.
Yeah.
But a red herring in your game is anytime you just throw out, basically something to throw off your players, and take them off the track of what the actual thing is because you want to kind of want to whammy them with it later.
Right, hammer them with some things here and there. Have some things build. Have some consequences of them, being off the trail. So it's basically and misdirections too. It's just you dangle some other plot threads that aren't directly related to your plot thread, but in some tangential way they are.
Well, yeah, you start revealing plot points and other things you just want to get out there, or just things you want to tell them about the world. And yes, some of them are going to have connecting pieces to what they're doing right now, and some of them are just going to be information to remember later, or when they get
three sessions later, this thing does come into effect.
Wait, remember when he said this?
Yeah. Well, so the kind of the thing is so you as the DM, you've come up with this storyline, this arc, and you want to. You already know what you're doing, and you want to put clues out there, but you at the same time you don't want them to actually guess the outcome, from session one. So that's where the misdirection and the red herrings are going to come in, so that you put out other possibilities, so they don't automatically assume it is the thing.
Wish we had the whiteboard up right now. So you have the story. You have got the story arc. It's all nice and smooth, looks like a hill. But then basically all your red herrings and misdirection make that
coming off of it. Yeah.
Like a back and forth, seismograph thing going on. So there, you want to keep them kind of going with a story arc, but you're giving them so many plot points and things to go to that they're not oh, here's the story arc right here. I can follow it like it's a path or a railroad.
Yeah, it kind of gets away from the railroad, and then also too, the interesting thing that can happen when you're using some level of misdirection is that your players will start conjecturing about things, as the people playing the game, not necessarily as the characters all the time, although that can happen as the characters too.
Yeah, it can happen in games.
Where they say stuff, and you're like, yeah, that's a fantastic idea. I'm going to make that be the thing that's actually going to happen, because that was way better than the thing I jotted down in my notes.
And then when they get to it, they're like, oh, I knew it was
all
this
along.
way.
Yeah. And people love having their suspicions confirmed too.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure to some degree, Scott was kind of happy when it was the mayor. He felt vindicated. He's
I knew it all along.
But when he's also said a dozen other people were also blood cultists. So
the head priest of the Church of Light and other people.
Although he did peg the mayor as the leader.
Yeah, it was good in that regard. For not knowing what was actually happening.
I have no idea how they came to that conclusion, or maybe he's just played way too many games of D&D, and he's like, you know what? It's got to be the mayor. Who else could it be? There's no butler.
Yeah, we can't find this guy. He must be hiding on a rock or another person. Yeah, so I like the idea of you got the story arc, but you're making it like go up and down, like fluctuate back and forth along that.
Now, the interesting problem that happens with, like, because misdirection sometimes could just be that you have another plot thread that, like, you know, or you just put something out there that you just thought it's cool, it adds some flavor to the world, it shows other things are happening other than the adventure the players are having. Like, it makes the world seem more full. And then the players just fixate on that one thing.
Like, I'm going to pick up the shiny thing and I'm going to run with it wherever it needs to go.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't need to go anywhere. It's just a shiny rock.
The boot is just a boot. Like, there's no, like, And, like, they just get absolutely obsessed with that thing. And you're like, why did I put that thing?
They were talking about in one of my campaigns, they were talking about the blacksmith. And they had the hammer of this old smith. And he also made a hat and boots. And they happened to find in a treasure, like 2 weeks later, a pair of hat and a pair of slippers. And they're like, are these the hats and boots? They were like ready to have an aneurysm. They were so excited. And I was like,
well, then
this is
all
going
of
to
a
be
sudden,
disappointing.
all of a sudden you could just make that be the thing. Or it could be like, no, this is not it. But if you, and then he'll describe them in great detail because you see this area.
Yeah, I was tempted to make one of them be there even though I had no plan on it happening and didn't even know what they did. I was like, no, I got to hold off.
Or maybe he'll have a rumor. A rumor on it.
So I had to like stop myself from going with what the players were thinking because it was just like you said, it's like, wow, this idea is way better than what I had, and it just happened to be I randomly rolled those two things. So I was like, gosh, is this dice fate happening?
Another great example from Ted's game of the unintentional red herring is when the orcs attacked the town, and we became fixated on finding orcs.
Yeah,
and we're just like
did we
scouring the wilderness.
One orc in that whole campaign?
In the town, like there was the imps and the orcs.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we did go out, and the only orcs we found were actually peaceful ones.
Peaceable enough, yeah. For orcs.
Yeah. Well, they weren't murdering anybody at the time.
Actively, yeah.
So, so that was a good example. We wasted a ton of time in game and out of game looking for orcs when it wasn't really part of the thing.
Although one critique I have, sometimes like you kind of armchair GM, you can't help it, you can't get away from it. It's just like,
especially now we can watch them on film.
Right. You can like draw the circles, some X's and O's. It's like watching football. Boom, and then he hits him right here. But like sometimes like the players suffer from a lack of like the feeling of what to do next. And like sometimes, sometimes you do want to let them just go off those tributaries and like show that like, yep, you guys can pretty much do whatever you want. It might not be the right thing at the time, but sometimes you suffer from like as a player, like, well, where is this story going and taking me? I want to use my agency in the game, but I don't feel like I have a thread to follow right now. And sometimes I feel like some games can suffer from that.
Well, yeah, I guess that's the problem of meta and without trying to meta, where you're like, well, you're playing a game, so obviously one of the objectives is to keep the game going.
Well, but as the person in that scenario, you want to be solving the problem. You want to actively, there's a problem happening that's been happening, and if you're the hero of the town that's already risking their life, you want to see it resolved or move toward the resolution. So I mean, it's not as meta as you would think because your character is actively living every day of his life engaged in that thing. So sometimes when weeks and weeks go on and you haven't had any leads on the thing, but the thing is still kind of happening, you're like, well, as that being that character, you're like, well, this is a problem. What's going on? You're waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Yeah. It is, but you're that character, basically being that character, looking from the outside in. So, like, it does, like, it warps perception, I think.
I play in 5th edition so far. I've only played characters that are perfectly content not ever going adventuring. They will absolutely. Now, it's hard because they will absolutely adventure, and there is a precedent for wanting to do that from their personalities. But at the same time, they're like, well, if nothing crazy is happening and I'm not threatened with death or the town's going to get blown up or something,
I'm not doing it.
Then I don't have to go out there and do stuff. So like
I'll just go about my business.
I'll just go about I've got a plan. My life has a goal, but I will absolutely do what needs to be done when necessary, and I won't hem and haw about it. But at the same time, I've got a plan. So if the adventure happens, I will deal with it. But it's not like Now with the blood cultists, I mean, people are going to get murdered and bad things could happen.
Yeah,
I don't
there's
know.
repercussions.
Demons could have gotten summoned.
Yeah.
So there was repercussions to time that is like, this is kind of stressful being in this situation. But being from a player's, like in the player standpoint, there was other things that I could also do and would do if I couldn't find any information. I mean, aside from go out in the woods every day looking for blood cultists, which I think
And
the
looking
wizard
for
did,
orcs, yeah.
and looking for orcs, there's a certain but I
that's-
understand if you're like the fighter and like I've got to stick this sword in some blood cultists to find meaning in my life because I'm the sword arm of Griffin-Gaff, then I could see that being like a real big tension as a player and as the character as well, trying to deal with those threads you can't find.
So at that point, though, like we had come across blood cultists that were orcs, that were humans, that were different races, but for whatever reason, at that point, the attack was waged by for orcs. So we decided we needed to find orcs, and it was a very tense situation because Taris had died, and we wanted revenge.
Yeah. It was
So there was a lot.
So really,
a lot riding on finding more blood cultist orcs.
long story short, we should have just killed the orcs that we encountered. Like, 'cause that would have made us feel good about it.
and we could have just went home and be like,
I'm feeling accomplished.
I feel so much better. Like if they weren't blood cultists, put the tokens and the marks on them so that they were like, look at all these blood cultist orcs we killed.
oh my god, just plant them.
Yeah.
And then they're
Nice.
like, well, that's that tribe that has lived forever next to Griffin-Gaff.
Peaceful.
That's been
They've been
now,
guardians.
I'm
of the-
actually really dying to talk about misdirection and red herrings, but I have it going on in my games right now.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to talk about it with these guys.
No president. So we'll just like leave the video and you just talk to the camera.
They'd be like, check this out, guys.
This is what I'm doing.
Yeah. So, but like as a DM, you come up with the arc, the storyline, you do your foreshadowing, but then you want to create the idea that it could be this thing, but maybe it could be this other thing. So but you want to give the players different things to explore.
Yeah. Well, so and also too, like for the practical application of this in your game, right? Like, you don't want to like completely like flesh out the misdirections to send them in different ways. You don't want to have like 3 different entire adventures like planned and ready to go, because that's a buttload of work that you're not going to use. I mean, you can cannibalize and reuse some of that stuff, but ultimately you don't want to create more work than you have to. So what do? Just talk to your players and just get a sense of firmly what they want to do and pursue, and then just plan that adventure out. Yeah, and hopefully they don't go off of left field of what they told you they wanted to do.
Well, you get a feel for what kind of bait they'll take.
Yeah.
And what they'll be like, oh, okay, that's just a piece of information. And I guess we were kind of being like, not like concrete about necessarily what we're planning, what we do as GMs in the sense. Like, I put out about 10 little pieces of content that either I mention a name of a tea that also happens to be an inn someplace that they're going to go to, and if they pick it up, they pick it up. Of course, I've mentioned this damn tea 5 times in 3 different sessions, and they still haven't connected it together. But they just do that sometimes. Maybe they'll figure it out when they get to the end. They'll be like, oh, green bell tea. So until such time, I'm just going to have to be like, I put it out there and they're just not picking it up. But I do about 10 pieces of information that are not like main plot, that they just like little pieces about the world. Maybe it's about a farmer down the street had a fire, or the green bell tea that also has the same name as an inn they're going to go to later. Do like little pieces like that.
Maybe they're going to go to
Maybe
later.
they're going to go to that freaking inn.
So I mean, you're kind of using this more in the way of like grounding the world and fleshing it out.
Yeah, but it's all piece of information that if they latch onto, they can learn more about that. And if they don't want to do it, like they didn't explore anything except they've only explored the top floor of the ancient abbey, which is owned by the Aasimar noble in the game. They haven't gone in the basement. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff down there.
You don't want to go in the basement.
You don't want to know what's in the basement.
I mean, but there's an entire adventure just in the basement, but no one's even ever asked about anything else except going to the library and going into the kitchen to eat something.
I mean, but you as a GM at any point can have one of those things in the basement break out and like, oh, there's a problem down here.
Yeah. Or
Whenever you want to make
I've got
that
a
happen.
plant that will mention it.
So
when
it
the
gets
time
pushed
is
into
right.
the laundry chute by accident?
Yeah, something happens. They get scared, fall into the laundry
Yeah, I mean,
chute,
there's so
trip
many
down the
ways that
stairs.
it's a ready-made adventure for whenever you want to have.
Yeah, and I have it. It's like there, and I know if someone goes down there, I can talk about it. But right now I haven't mentioned it because I don't want to put that idea in their head until like a certain time. So it's kind of like I'm kind of like it's like in the like maybe a few sessions from now, I'll mention things about it, or the session before that I'll mention something about it, and then kind of like a lead up into that. So it depends on whether or not they're going to go down there. They might not ever go down there. So I don't. It's important to not load the little pieces that you stick into the game too far in one direction, or someone's going to try and make a pattern out of it.
Honestly,
where you don't want them to go.
You only really want to ever put in one red herring at a time. Otherwise, you will. That's what you're going to have. You know, and you know, really, and the only reason to use it, in my opinion, is just to build suspension tension down the road. So when you finally do reveal, you know, you know who the real villain was, they're like, oh my god, you know, you couldn't believe it.
Yeah, sorry, I was thinking about different pieces of information and plot points rather than the red herring thing that we were actually talking about.
Yeah, and misdirected.
You got misdirected.
I was misdirected. I was like, oh, I've got some point to make.
I was like, Nate, over there, shiny. Ooh, Abby's.
Abby's.
But yeah, so I don't know, guys. In the comments below, let us know how you use red herrings and misdirection in your games. I'm sure you have some great stories to tell.
Players getting obsessed with them, perhaps.
Yeah, which has happened. While you're at it, share, like, and subscribe.
You can patronize us in a way that we like over on Patreon.
You can also check out the articles at nerdarchy.com.
Till next time,
Stay nerdy.